Find Your Career webinar program. My name is Adam Sylvain, and I work with the Alumni Career Development Team here at the University of Chicago in Hyde Park. I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar entitled Finding Work You Love After 50. Today we will hear from Hallie Crawford. Hallie has been a certified career coach and national career expert for 19 years. Her company, HallieCrawford.com, and team of coaches have helped thousands of people worldwide identify and transition into their dream career, effectively navigate their job search, and enhance their performance at work. Hallie is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including US News, Forbes.com, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, and Fox Business News. For more information about their services, you can visit www.HallieCrawford.com. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to cede the floor to Hallie.
Thank you, Adam. Greatly appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for being here today. Yes, I have to have my glasses on because I will be 50 in just about 3 years. So this topic is actually timely for me as well. So as Adam said, I am Hallie Crawford. I am a certified career coach and the founder of my own company, HallieCrawford.com. We have been coaching and training for, it will be 19 years actually in March of this year. And the tips that I'm going to share with you today, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you. I love presenting these webinars, especially to the University of Chicago alumni, because I lived in Chicago for about 8 years before I moved here to Atlanta, so have a special affinity for this group and the city. And the tips that we're going to share with you today are advice that we share with our clients all day, every day to help them find the right path, if you will, or the right job or kind of their encore career after 50. And one of the things I wanted you to know first as we start to move through the slides here today is that I understand how hard it can be, especially at this stage in life, given I'm 47, getting close to age 50 and over, that I understand how hard it can be personally to figure out kind of what you want to do next and how daunting in some ways it might feel to either find another full-time job, identify what that part-time job might be, or just how you want the rest of your life to look professionally. Because our priorities change over time. Adam and I were talking about, kids and all of that. And as my son grows older and things change for him, and for me personally as a result, our priorities can shift over time too. So that's exactly part of what we're going to be talking about today. And this is our website that has additional free tools, just so you all know, that can help you navigate your job search further if that's what you need help with today, and other specific topics as well. Feel free to visit that afterwards. So let's talk about our agenda, first of all, and what we're going to be talking about. So ideally, what we want everyone in terms of their professional lives and career path, regardless of their age, of course, is we want them to be in, their dream job in some way, shape, or form, whatever that looks like for you at this point in your life. And the 3 steps that we are going to talk about today to help you accomplish that goal are going to be how to define fulfillment and what does fulfillment mean for you at this phase in your life. And as part of that, how to begin to define what your career values are. Because by the way, our values are things that, to a certain extent, they won't change incredibly dramatically over time, but they may change a little bit in terms of the priority of importance to us, which can actually impact enormously how we want our personal and our career lives to look. Or our values may change in terms of how we define them now at this point in our lives. So even though one could argue, and this is what we tell our clients all the time, is that your values should be things typically that stay relatively kind of the same over the course of your lives. They may change in terms of how you define them, but also in terms of the priority of them as well. And that can make big or mean that you need to make big life changes. So we'll talk about defining fulfillment first and those career values and what they are now for you and how to identify those. We do want to talk about, second, our ideal career model, because it will help you think about all of the different components that you need to consider in order to, number one, know what the right next step is for you, what the next best step is. But then also, help you start to think about how to brand yourself at this point in your career as well, because you'll see with the pieces on the model, it talks a lot about your strengths, your past experience, your personality type, et cetera. So we'll talk about that as well. And then third, we want to discuss with you how to kind of expand your thinking and thinking outside the box a little bit more in terms of what the right next step would be. Because we find that when clients come to us and they're trying to, figure out what their encore career is, so to speak, and, work after 50 and how they want that to look, but also how to land those positions, that unfortunately they're tending to think kind of inside the box a little bit and their focus is a little bit too narrow. So we want to talk with you as well about how to expand your thinking and how to conduct a specific process that we leverage with our clients on how to brainstorm different ideas for what the right next step would be. And there's 4 basic steps to that we will show you today. Just so you all know, as Adam said, you will get a recording of the webinar today, but if anyone would also like a copy of the PowerPoint slides, please feel free to email us at admin@hallecrawford.com. I don't know about you, but I don't like to be frantically writing things down. I like to try to pay attention in the moment. So don't hesitate to reach out to us at this email address. If you would like to get a copy of the slides, we would be happy to share those with you, as well as additional tools that we're going to share with you and provide today as well. All right, so let's talk about, why this subject matter or topic is important in the first place. What we have found is that although some of the tools that we will use with our clients, regardless of age, will kind of span across age range and, progression in their career, there are different fears, so to speak, or concerns or confidence issues that can come up with professionals over 50. So there are some differences there. They may be concerned about age discrimination. We hear this a lot from our clients. They may have concerns and greater concerns about financial stability, which is obviously completely valid and understandable. They could be concerned about the changing work environment and how work environments are changing now. And as part of that, how do I fit in and where do I fit in this, day and age of what some people are calling a gig economy, where people change jobs much more frequently. We had a client recently come to us and say, I was considering, or he actually took a new job, and he hired us after the fact to say, I took this new job and they're firing Nerf guns all the time in the office, and they're kind of telling me I don't really fit in, and I don't feel that way either. It's just not working out for me. So there are different concerns that can come up at this age. So we do want to address this in part as well, I would say, obviously because more people are working longer and staying in the workforce longer for necessity, but also because they just want to have that sense of purpose. I don't know about you all, but I do want to work as long as I possibly can because it gives me that sense of enjoyment and fulfillment, but also it gives me like that meaning and a reason to get out of bed in the morning, so to speak. The good news is that you can find fulfillment and figure out how to navigate these different issues and concerns. It is possible to do so, and obviously that's why we're here today. It does take time and it takes effort. So one of the things before we get to the next slide and the first tip is that I do want you to know that this isn't Pollyanna, wave a magic wand and everything's going to be perfect. That it does take time and effort to think this through, think about what your next best step is, and to work towards that, to deal with your age on your resume and on LinkedIn, et cetera, and explain why you bring value to the table and how it may be different from, obviously when you are in your 20s. But it is possible to overcome all of these different obstacles and find that fulfillment. So let's dive right in and talk about that first topic first, is defining fulfillment. So we want you to think about, just by the way, fulfillment first, everyone, because what we find is when our clients do that and really think about, okay, what would give them meaning at this stage of the game for them, they're going to think outside the box a lot more than they would have otherwise. They will be more creative with their thinking. They'll be more motivated in their job search because they're looking for something that has that meaning with them. They'll be better able to convince an employer employer about why this is the right fit for them, because of course employers want to know why you want their job, and they want someone who's going to be enthusiastic and engaged. And also because what we have found is that when clients identify what's going to be the most rewarding for them right out of the box, that gives them a lot of really good career ideas at the very beginning of the process that we take them through. So they're able to think a lot more tangibly about, okay, here's some possible ideas, but also think a little bit more creatively, okay? So the first thing we want you to do in terms of finding fulfillment in this first step is to do a quick exercise, and I'll explain to you why this mermaid is on the slide here in just a moment. Is we want you to think about what is rewarding to you now at this phase in your life and in your career. And by the way, we do want you to think about your career and your life and personal life as well, because there could be clues in your personal life as to some of the elements that you'd like to have in your next job, whatever that is, okay? So we want you, number one, to dig underneath any hobbies or interests, either that you've always had and still participate in, or even ones that you had, you know, a long time ago but don't participate in as much. Those may be things, or there may be qualities about those hobbies and interests that you'd like to bring forward now into your career or your professional life at this point, okay? And I'll explain more about how that works when we talk about this image here, and I'll give you a quick anecdote from me about, you know, how we need to think about that. The second thing we want you to do is to think about what is rewarding to you now by looking at, okay, think about a long time ago, so in your 20s, for example, and your early career path. And why did you get into your profession in the first place? Write all of these things down, the hobbies and interests and qualities, things about those things that you enjoy, but also why did you get into your industry in the first place? Why did you take the first job that you had? Because thinking back to those things in some cases can help us kind of get back to that passion, if you will, and what the original interest was for your industry that you may want to bring forward now. So here's the deal with this image and kind of how to think about these two things. So when I was a kid, I actually grew up in Florida. So as you can imagine, growing up in Florida and then living in Chicago for 8 years, whew, that was a big shock, but I loved it. Growing up in Florida, we would go to Weeki Wachee Springs all the time. I don't know if any of you have been there or have heard of it, but it is still open. I think it's been purchased by a different theme park. Doesn't matter. Point being, every time we went there, I was in love with watching the mermaids underwater. And I've actually seen videos of them. They're still there since then. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, that's what I want to do. That's what I want to be when I grow up. And of course, as I grew up, that wasn't going to be the most practical thing for me to do. It's not, you know, a strength for me. I didn't want to live in Florida, lots of different reasons. But the point is, when I was thinking about what I wanted to do career-wise and work-wise, and as well as what some of my strengths were, I thought about that childhood dream, and I realized that there were actually some values kind of embedded in that dream, if you will. So although it's not practical for me to go be a mermaid at Weeki Wachee, underneath that, the reasons why that was appealing to me were partly because I love to educate, and I've always been the type of person that likes to educate people and give advice, and that's part of what the mermaids were doing, is they were educating people about the ocean, right? But there was also this element of entertaining, and I found as a coach that I actually love to do webinars like this. I love to be on the news, radio, et cetera, because there's a part of me that honestly is a little bit of a ham. And so there's that entertainment element coupled with the education element that I was really drawn to as a kid and still am today. And then finally, for me, I kind of liked the idea as a kid even that there's a little bit of risk involved. Like they were floating around in the water and sure they have these oxygen things, okay, whatever. But it kind of seemed a little bit risky to me. That is one of my personal as well as career values. I love snow skiing, horseback riding, things like that. And I absolutely love actually being an entrepreneur because there's an element of risk that is actually rewarding and fulfilling to me. So when you think about your hobbies and interests and think back to your early career, everyone, even if those ideas or that path is not a practical path for you, don't discount it completely. At the very least, think about what is cool about those things or what is appealing to you about those things, and write down what those are for you, because those could either give you clues to other related ideas that actually could be practical and realistic for you, or it could give you ideas about components or elements work-wise that you want to have going forward. Okay, so that's our first step with defining fulfillment. Let's take a look at our ideal career model next. So when you take a look at this model here, the first thing that we want you to look at when you review it, and I'll kind of show you how we want you to step through this, is we have people look at fulfillment first. So we want you to take a look at fulfillment like we're talking about. And if you take a look at this here, this one is in blue because it's the foundation for everything else. It gives people the most career ideas, but also each piece of the model is impacted by fulfillment as well as vice versa. So for example, if we're not getting compensated in a way that we feel is fair and that works for us, we are not going to feel as fulfilled. If we are not leveraging our strengths all day, every day in a way that works for us, we're not going to feel as fulfilled. So the fulfillment piece impacts everything else, which is another reason why we start with that. Okay, and then we'll talk about in just a few minutes how we want you to walk around it, but I'll show you this just really quickly. We have you start with fulfillment first, then we want you to look at enjoyment and brainstorm your most enjoyable tasks there, and then go to the left, looking at strengths, then up to education and experience, up to personality type, work environment, and then compensation. And just by the way, these are all of the components that you need to be considering in order to help you define what the right next step should be for you. These are all of the pieces that you need to understand about yourselves as a professional and what's important to you in each of these areas, because that will help you then evaluate these different opportunities that you have, as well as we said earlier, help you start to brand yourself as a professional as well, especially when you think about the strengths section, the education section, experience, and personality. So in terms of thinking about branding yourselves, just by the way, and how to sell yourself to prospective employers when you're writing your elevator speech, et cetera, you want to be thinking specifically about the strengths, the education, the experience, but also what your personality type is and how that enhances what you bring to the table. Okay, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go here. As we said, we want you to start with fulfillment first. The next way that we want you to start to think about what's going to be most fulfilling and rewarding to you, as we said earlier, is to think about your career values as well as what's listed on this slide here. So if you take a look at this, and then we do have a poll that we'll launch in just a minute here, Adam, if we could, that'd be great. So one of the things you can do, as well as looking at your hobbies and interests, and we do, by the way, want you to do all of these exercises, because different exercises are going to pull out different elements or things that are important to you as a result of thinking about them kind of from different angles, if you will. So another exercise to do is to think about, for 10 minutes, doesn't have to be that long, but how you define success at this stage in your life and in your career. What does success mean to you now? It is going to be different, I promise you, at least in some ways, from when you started out in your career in your 20s, let's say. So take a few minutes to define, okay, basically, what does success mean to me at this point in my life? Is it work-life balance and having more of it? We have had clients, by the way, who are older, and they say to us, you know what, I want a job where I can phone it in because I want to spend more time with my grandkids or whatever it is. Another person may not say that and may say the complete opposite. I still want to feel challenged and go for the next best thing here. So whatever success means for you, you want to just journal about that and literally do like a quick brain dump there. Anything goes, write everything down. And then you can start to think about and identify themes from what you've written down as you go, okay? Compare it to your interests and hobbies as well, like we said. The second thing to think about is related to what we said earlier. Identify all of the interests that you have now, mostly in your personal life first, but then it's okay to start to think about your professional life. But by the way, we do want you to think about your personal life first, and then move that into the professional. And the reason why we say that, everyone, is because we want you to find something that's true for who you are as a person. What we have found is if people go towards the professional first, they start to write down things that they feel like they should have on their list. Like, okay, I should say a sense of achievement or accomplishment, and I should say I want to be a team player. Versus, for example, if you have a value of, creating experiences for other people, that's going to come out of you thinking about what's important to you personally, not professionally. It'll help you think outside the box a little bit more. So number 2 here is identify your interests and really think about those personal elements first. The third thing is to think about, okay, what does your typical ideal day look like now? What are those qualities that you want to have in your ideal day at this point in your career? Is it you'd like to have a more flexible schedule where you can go in earlier and leave earlier? Is it do you want to work remotely? And you need to look, for example, at jobs on a job board like flexjobs.com where you've got that more flexible schedule and also you can work remotely. So you want to think about that ideal day. And then finally, and we'll talk about this one just a little bit more too, is to identify at this point in your career what your top 3 career values are. And what we have our clients do, we encourage you to do this, is to do a quick peak experience exercise and then write about that and start to pull out themes from that exercise. So what we have you do here is think of a peak experience in your life. Could be any period of time in your life. It could be a moment of time or it could be a period of time, doesn't matter. But bottom line is it's a period of time or moment that you just felt like you were running on all cylinders. Like everything was fantastic. You felt on top of the world. Doesn't have to be you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. We've had examples all the way from a trip to Italy that someone planned to I was the editor of my high school yearbook and I absolutely loved it and here were the reasons. So we want you to think of what that peak experience is. Then we want you to write about it for a few minutes and focus on not who was there or what the details were as much, but focus on what was cool about that experience for you. Why did you enjoy it so much? And when you start to write about it, and even better, we encourage you to tell a friend or family member about it, work with us on this. We do this with our clients all the time, tell a coach or a mentor, whatever it is. But when you tell someone else about this peak experience, in addition to writing it down and analyzing it that way, they can also help you pull out what some of your possible values are, okay? And then once you've pulled out those personal values, whether it's creativity, whether it's working with data and numbers, whether it's event planning or something completely different from those things, they will start to help you pull out what those career values are. So you take those personal values from that peak experience and you say, okay, what are the values I want to have honored in my career at this stage in my professional life? Come up with what those are and how you define them. Quick example, and then Adam will go ahead and do our first poll here in just a moment. But a quick example would be, for example, if you have 2 people, 2 of our clients, let's say, and they both even say, my peak experience was a trip to Italy. That's one of my favorites, so I always use that one. They might say the same peak experience, right? But the difference between the 2, if you listen to them, one person might say, I loved the planning of it and the organizing and estimating how much time we should spend at each place and how are we going to get there, all of that, right? That person may be better suited, for example, to be like a project or program manager or an event planner or, something like that, or working within the travel industry just for example, but something to do with like organizing and planning, right? Another person may talk about that same exact trip to Italy, but guess what? When they talk about it as their peak experience, they may be talking about the food and the art and the beauty and the creativity and the aesthetics. They may need to go do something where they're working at like a museum, for example, or something that's more creative like graphic design or whatever. Same peak experience, but 2 different perspectives on that same experience and what they enjoyed about it. So that's how you start to think about pulling out what your values are. It's based on what you talk about and what you talk about most frequently relating to that peak experience. So we'd like to do our first poll here, Adam, if we could go ahead and pull that up. we're curious how many on the call today know what their career values are. And we're talking about career specific ones, so not just personal ones, but career specific. And we are asking, what those career values are at this point in your life. So go ahead and put those results in for us, please. I'm going to take a quick sip of water. And then Adam, if you could do me a favor, as we normally do, if you could read out the results. I still can never find where they are. It's too much techie for me.
Yep, no problem at all. Yeah, so I'll give folks joining us just a few more seconds to register your yes or no response to that question of, what is your confidence, or how many of you know what your career values are? Yes or no. Give a couple more seconds. We've got almost all of our responses here.
That's great. And by the way, everyone, I look to the left every once in a while just because I've got a split screen here. So I'm with you. I just got to keep track of things.
All right, so we have a pretty good split with this question. So for 53% said yes, they do know what their career values are, and 47% that say they do not.
So it's good that some do. For the people that do, just by the way, I would encourage you, or feel like you do, I would encourage you to go through some of these exercises at least to just double check and make sure that those are the case. And what I have found, just by the way, is even when our clients tell us they do know them, when they go through this exercise, they identify at least one or two more that they didn't realize or just, hadn't thought about or whatever. So I encourage you to do this. And then for you all as well, to start to think about, what we talked about before. Okay, how can these relate to possible career ideas for you relating to the model in just a moment? And for those of you that don't feel like you know your values, obviously you're in the right place. We do encourage you to go through these exercises kind of in the order that they've been presented, because that will help you kind of build that foundation of what your values are and what's important to you. So our second step here to finding work that you love after 50 is to use the career model that I showed you before as a checklist, if you will. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into it at this point in the webinar to explain kind of how you go through this as a checklist to say, okay, these are the things that I want to have. So as we talked about earlier, I'll just use my pointer here, my cursor. You want to think about what's going to be the most fulfilling and rewarding to you, and then translate those values, like we said, and those qualities into, okay, what could be some tangible career ideas that come out of that? And by the way, we are going to be talking about that in our third step in just a moment, so hang tight for that one. In the next piece, when you look at enjoyment, if we move to the left here, this piece is thinking about what have you enjoyed in the past in terms of your professional life specifically, and what are, and even way back, okay? And also think about not just professionally, but also tasks that you may have performed in volunteer work, by serving on a board, or anything else. So anything else that could be professional oriented, think specifically about those most enjoyable tasks that you've performed. This one is very task based, okay? Then we want you to go to the left yet again and take a look at what are your strengths? What are your top 5 strengths? We like our clients to take the Strengths Finder assessment. We find that's a really good start to help you begin to think about what your strengths are at this point in your career and life, because they will change and can change over time. And the Strengths Finder is really good too, by the way, because this one helps you articulate what your strengths are even more and gives you specific language that you can use for prospective employers during the course of interviews and even on your resume. We have had people list what their top 5 Strengths Finder strengths are on their resume and in their cover letter, and use that in what we would call like a brag book that they bring in for an interview, okay? So strengths is really good, by the way, obviously for branding purposes, understanding the strengths that you want to leverage now at this point in your career. Next, we want to look at education. Think back to any coursework you took at the University of Chicago, but anything else education-wise since then that you have enjoyed and want to bring forward, maybe at this point in your career, that maybe you haven't leveraged it as much in your career and you'd like to bring that forward now. Also, by the way, as we talked about, for branding purposes, you want to list any relevant coursework that would be more recent, obviously, training or certification on your resume. Next, we want you to look at your past experience and especially current experience. And this is where, when you're thinking about kind of the 8 possible ageism issue, everyone, some people will take dates off of when they graduated. We have had clients, obviously, if it's more than 10 years old, in terms of past experience, just drop it off and not include it on their resume. That's okay too. And when you think about past experience, though, don't be afraid to tout yourself at this age and say, look, my experience is an asset. I can hit the ground running. You don't have to train me. I have life experience as well as professional experience that I bring to the table. So this is also for branding purposes, as well as thinking about what experience do I want to leverage in this next phase of my career that would be fulfilling and rewarding. Next, we want you to think about your personality type. Are you more extroverted or introverted, and how does that impact your work style and what you bring to the table? Do you have, just fantastic leadership skills or change management skills because you tend to be a really even-keeled person? That is something that is valid to talk about in networking events when you're talking with people or to a prospective employer. Your personality traits are your soft skills, if you will, and you want to make sure you tout those as well, because they are absolutely valid for selling yourself as a prospective employee. Next, you want to think about the right work environment that you want in that next position and job that you're looking for. Next, is it greater work-life balance? We want it to be a little bit quieter, whatever it is. That's the work environment piece. What's the right next, set of coworkers that you'd like to be around? And then finally, what do you require or want in terms of compensation at this point in your career? Part of this could be that I don't care as much about the compensation because I would rather have greater work-life balance or work remotely. Or some of you may say, no, absolutely, I need to stay in the same spot. So with the ideal career model, we'd like you to print this out and review it checkpoint by checkpoint, if you will, which sounded kind of weird, I realize, but we want you to use this as a checklist, piece by piece, better way to say it, in order to evaluate your career options, narrow them down, and brainstorm different options as well, in addition to helping you understand how to brand yourself using the certain pieces that we said. I understand that this piece may feel a little bit overwhelming. So if you feel like you need additional assistance with this and you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I'll get started on it, Hallie, but I need help with it, we are happy to offer anyone on the call today or even listening in later to the recording a free career strategy session. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us for that. We'd be happy to do that with you. You would set that up by emailing us at admin@halliecrawford.com, the same email that we referenced before. But happy to set that up with you all because we realize that we're giving you a lot of information today and you may need a little bit of not just hand-holding with it, but more specific advice to your unique situation, because that happens a lot where, everyone's situation is different. You may need that uniquely tailored advice, if you will. Let's talk next about career brainstorming and how to conduct a very effective brainstorming kind of process or multiple sessions over time to help you identify what's out there. Because I don't know how you all feel, but there are a lot of our clients who are, at this age and stage in their career, they might be like, you know what, Hallie, I've never interviewed for a job ever. I've just gotten, referrals. And I really don't know what's out there. It's been a long time since I've, interviewed or been in the, in a new position. I've been at my company or within this job for, a really long time. So some people will say that they have no idea to kind of look at what's out there. So let's take a look at this next slide in terms of, how to do effective career brainstorming at this phase in your career, and especially how to leverage, online resources to help you with this. So here's the deal with this career brainstorming piece or step, if you will, is the problem is that, there's so many factors to consider the right next step for you and the right career fit that people get really overwhelmed and they just would rather, oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with this, right? So it's easy to procrastinate and just flat out put it off, and we get that. The second problem that people encounter is that there's no website out there with one comprehensive list of all the jobs that exist or career paths that exist. That just doesn't happen. It's not there. So as a result, career seekers like you who are already unhappy or uncertain or feeling, kind of concerned about what the next step is, they become really overwhelmed and fearful, and they don't know where to start. So this is why we're talking about this very specific process. So let's take a look at this next slide here. And the 4-step process that we want you all to write down and start to follow, that, by the way, will help you not get lost in the internet and not get overwhelmed with doing this. This is why we have it as this very specific 4-step process, is we want you to first make a list of relevant keywords that make sense for you to plug into job boards and general search sites. And we'll talk about keywords in just a moment. But what I mean by that, just so you know really quickly, are some of your interests, some of your strengths, data analysis, financial analysis, whatever some keywords might be that could help you brainstorm different ideas. The second step is to plug those keywords into, first, general search sites like Google, Google, Bing, whatever search site it is that you typically use, because we find that this is actually really helpful to plug in careers leveraging financial analysis or whatever it is, because that will help you not just see what jobs are out there, but articles that talk about these positions and tell you more about this particular career path, or a blog post, or an industry-specific, meeting that's coming up that you need to attend to learn more. So we want you to brainstorm just using general search sites, because you're going to find additional kind of different types of information about different career paths using Google, for example. Third, we want you to look at career brainstorming sites, and we'll tell you about those in just a moment. And then finally, we want you to take a look at job boards and plug your keywords into these different 3 places online. This will help you brainstorm different ideas effectively. And by the way, we do want you to do it in this order, because think of it as a funnel, everyone. You're going to start at the top of the funnel and start to narrow things down as you go through these different types of sites. Let's take a look at this next slide. The first thing that we want you to do before you even conduct or start on this process is to stay committed or be committed to being organized about this. So we want you to have an Excel spreadsheet. And by the way, we do have one that we're happy to share with you. Just email us to get it. It's an Excel spreadsheet that will help you track the relevant keywords that turn out to be useful for you when you're brainstorming, to track your career ideas that you come up with as you go, the pages that you want to review over time, that you want to come back to and read through, the requirements of the jobs that you're identifying, just to make sure that you feel like you're qualified, and also tracking what the salary is. And then also staying organized once you're ready to go out there and start networking with people and conducting informational interviews and talking with people who are in these jobs so that you can learn more. So before we do our next poll here, I did want to tell you all one thing that's critically important to staying organized. When you're working through this process, we want you to go through each one in this way. We want you to just spend a few minutes identifying relevant keywords first. Don't do anything else but do that, because you want to brainstorm lots of different ideas that could be relevant and really think outside the box there, because that will help you identify and capture more ideas. We also want you to plug the keywords into these different types of websites methodically and slowly, and only copy and paste the pages that you want to review. That's why this step is on here on this slide. We want you to copy and paste the pages that you would like to review later on and read in greater depth. Copy and paste them into Excel. Don't go reading them right when you see them right away. Scan them quickly, bookmark them, copy and paste them into Excel, etc., whatever it is, because we want you to go back and read those later on when you have more time. If you go into them right then, you're going to get lost in the internet. You're going to keep clicking, and you'll lose sight of where you are, and you know how that goes. When we're all sitting around looking at Facebook or whatever it is, we lose track of time, and we've wasted that time. We have no idea where we are. So you want to make sure that you stay organized in multiple ways, but as a big part of this, that you copy and paste the websites you want to revisit later and look more into and read in greater depth. So Adam, if we can go ahead and do our second poll here, that would be great. As part of conducting this research, one of the next things we want you to do is be comfortable going to start to network with people in these different jobs that you're considering and looking at. And so we're curious to find out, once you get to this next step here, everyone, how effective you feel your networking skills are. And then we'll start to talk a little bit more about this brainstorming process.
All right, so we've got lots of responses coming in. I'll give a few more seconds for attendees to rate themselves here in their effectiveness at networking. So you've got three options: poor, good, and excellent. Select where you think you fit best, and I'll go ahead and share out these results in just a second.
Okay, good. And by the way, too, while you all are doing the poll, I am going to put this next slide up so that if you would like a copy of the worksheet to help you track your research and networking, just so you have the information there, you can ask for it from us.
All right, so we have the results of that poll, and we have a very honest group here because 46% rated themselves poor networking, 43% rated themselves good, and 10% rated themselves as excellent.
Okay, so please know, thank you for being honest, everyone, and please know you're not alone. I would say 9 times out of 10 with our clients when they come to us, even when they say, oh, I'm very good at networking, and we dig into what they actually do and what their follow-up is and everything else, they're not as good as they think they are. So please know you're not alone. This is completely normal. Networking is still, just by the way, the best way to get a job. The hidden job market still exists, even with LinkedIn and everything else. LinkedIn is critically important to your search. But just think of it as an even better way to kind of network more easily and also cast your net wider. LinkedIn does not mean that suddenly, we can just go apply for jobs on job boards and it's going to be simple and easy. What I will tell you, and then we'll keep going to this next slide here so I can finish up with the brainstorming section. But I did want to say and remind you all that the thing about LinkedIn that has changed the game with job searching is that employers and recruiters are absolutely using it up to 80% sometimes for their recruiting efforts. Instead of, posting jobs on job boards, they are going out there and trying to find candidates that are qualified that they want to interview. Because if you can imagine, would you rather post a job and go through 300 resumes and wade through whatever it is? And I realize that the scanners kind of narrow it down, but you get the gist. Or would you rather say, let me do a search on LinkedIn of qualified candidates in my area and scan through those to really, target and pick certain people that you think would be good? You know the answer. You'd rather use LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is critically important, and that is another way that has changed the game. So quick overview of the sites. Just as a reminder, after you start to identify what your keywords are based on your strengths, your interest, and your past experience, we want you to start with the general search sites, look at these career-specific sites, and then look at the job boards, this 3-step process. If you take a look at this next slide, we're going to show you what some of the job boards are and some of the brainstorming websites are, okay? So the brainstorming tools or websites where you can plug keywords in and it will show you, okay, based on your keyword search, these are the career paths or the careers that exist that are out there that could be relevant to you and what you're thinking about. This list is all on here. Again, get a copy of the presentation if you'd like to be able to print this out and have it for you. Second Act Careers, ONet Center, My Plan, these are all really great websites that can help you brainstorm ideas using these keywords. A couple of the job boards that we like are Indeed and Glassdoor. I'll show you a few more when in just a couple minutes here on another slide. But these are 2 good ones to start with, as well as LinkedIn. And then keep in mind, too, that when you're using your keywords and thinking about different websites that you want to leverage, do think about industry-specific or research for industry-specific websites that you want to plug these keywords into, too, to help you narrow down your search a little bit more. Especially based on if you're interested in staying in your same industry, that can help you with those industry-specific job boards, can help you narrow it down a lot faster. All right. So with the career brainstorming process, we talked first about keywords. The way that we want you to think about this is to think about your interests and strengths, okay? It could be anything, and I'm going to take you to the next slide here in step number 2 to show you a couple of examples about how to do this. When you plug your keywords into general search sites like Google, you might say careers and data analysis, careers related to data analysis, jobs in education. You can't plug in, obviously, creative jobs. You could do that, but just be prepared to come up with, lists that are kind of long. But if, for example, you're looking for a job that has a large element of creativity as part of it, you could plug that in and say jobs, leveraging creativity. I would actually say creative jobs, and see what comes up. There could be a couple of things that crop up that give you some ideas. So after you come up with your list of keywords, step 2 is using these general search sites. The next one, step 3, is the career brainstorming sites. I listed those for you just a moment ago. Keywords plugged into these websites help you narrow down your ideas, and also, by the way, will help you begin to make it more real for you, because these websites will start to show you what the job requirements are, what the strengths are that are required, and also what the compensation and salary is. For example, BLS.org, which is the United States Bureau of Labor and Statistics, they have a career directory on their website, and as part of plugging in your keywords there, they will tell you what the projected career or job outlook is for that career path, as well as what the requirements are and the salary, typical range there, okay? And step number 4, as we said, is to search the job boards. We had referenced a few of these online also already, but if you take a look at this slide here, ZipRecruiter is another website that we are hearing from our clients that they're having decent success with. So we would encourage you not just to look at these as well as LinkedIn, but ZipRecruiter as well. That's gaining a little bit more traction in this world, so to speak, of job searching. And then finally, just kind of as a bonus tip here, obviously, once you start to narrow down what you want to do next, you want to make sure that you're revising and updating your LinkedIn and resume for your job search, okay? And when you're doing that, just a couple of quick tips here for resume and LinkedIn. We talked about a few already. You want all of your materials to represent you, obviously, and communicate your brand and have those things be consistent. With your resume and cover letter especially, you want to check the formatting, maintain consistency in terms of font size, everything else, so it doesn't look messy. Make sure that you use a lot of white space on your resume so it doesn't look too dense and hard to read, okay? You want to make sure in your LinkedIn and in your resume that you include relevant keywords that would be of interest to prospective employers. And with keywords on your resume, by the way, everyone, you want the relevant keywords to be at the top half of the first page of your resumes. That's how it gets by those ATS scanners, okay? Obviously, mention marketable results with each of your bullet points on your resume and on LinkedIn. Answer the question every time, so what? Why should I care? Think about being the prospective employer in that regard. And with your resume, and Adam, we can go ahead and do this last poll here, number 3, if you want to go ahead and launch that. With your resume, everyone, you want to have a professional profile or a summary at the top that sells you and gives kind of a quick overview of who you are as a professional, but what you bring to the table. So we want to ask you in this last and third poll, and then we'll get to Q&A here in just a moment. How many feel like you know how to leverage LinkedIn effectively for networking purposes? And again, be honest here. It's okay if you feel like the answer is, ooh, not so much.
All right, we've got most of our responses coming in. I'll keep this poll open for just a couple more seconds and share out the results.
Okay, good, awesome. Give you a moment there to finish.
All right, so it looks like we have, again, an honest group, 74% that answered no to this question and 26% that said yes.
Okay, so one of the things, we actually have a LinkedIn guide that we would be happy to share with you all. If anyone would like a copy of that, it's just admin@halliecrawford.com. We'd be happy to share that with you. That will help you get a greater sense of how to leverage LinkedIn for networking purposes. But just really quick bottom line, and we do want you all to start to write down what your action items would be, especially one for the next week. So start to think about that and get out your pen and paper to write that down while we're talking about LinkedIn for just a moment. There's a magic number these days of having 500 plus LinkedIn connections. So one of the first things that we do want you to do is to start to enhance your LinkedIn connections and add to your, that list of them and your roster of them, so to speak. one of the things we would absolutely encourage you to do, and Adam did not pay me to say this, I tell this to all of our clients, is we want you to leverage your University of Chicago LinkedIn alumni group. Huge place to start making new connections, reaching out to people to conduct informational interviews, so that you can learn a little bit more about what it takes to, get into this new industry that you're considering, for example, or get into a specific company or organization that you're interested in, okay? So two of the first things I would do for LinkedIn is enhance your number of connections, and as part of doing that, leverage your University of Chicago LinkedIn network and start to just reach out to people and ask them if they're willing to chat with you for just a few minutes over the phone, so you can kind of pick their brain a little bit more about what their career path is like, what they like or don't like about working for a specific organization, and what that particular employer might be looking for. That will help you with your search. Just a quick reminder, if you need additional advice, you would like the presentation or a copy of any of the tools that we've talked about today, email us at admin@hallecrawford.com. And as we go to Q&A here, everyone, go ahead and start entering those into the chat box. And Adam, if you can filter through those and read them out to me, that'd be great. Want you to remember that I know that some of these action steps might feel like, oh, I don't want to do this, it's not fun, or it's pushing me out of my comfort zone. Remember, everyone, without risk, there's no reward. The greatest risk in life is not taking one. You want to be able to say to yourself that you at least tried some of these things to see how they worked for you versus you didn't try them at all. Okay, let's go to the Q&A. And Adam, if you could read those out to me, that'd be great.
Yes, absolutely. So our first question comes from an attendee who shares that they have interviews lined up in the coming week, but the LinkedIn profile is not where they want it to be. Should this person take it offline until it's perfect? In their situation, they've been at the same job for 15 years, so they haven't paid any attention to it in a while.
I think that's a really good question. I would say don't take it offline, but I would work on it between now and then, because in case they're looking at you between now and then, and also because it would be great to connect with the people that you're interviewing next week so that you can read a little bit more about their background and find ways, commonalities, or things that you can talk with them about as well. So I would keep it up there. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I would try to enhance it at least a little bit, spend like an hour on it to just improve it a little bit more as much as you can. The fact that you have interviews, that already says something good, right? So just get it to a little bit of a better place, but I wouldn't take it offline.
Great. We have another question. Is there accountability/responsibility for your LinkedIn connections? Are you evaluated by who you are connected to? Yeah, I guess another question related to LinkedIn there. How concerned should folks be about who they're connected to on LinkedIn?
That's a really great question. I wouldn't be as worried about exactly who. I guess I would say two-part answer. Number one, I wouldn't be too worried about it because it's not like Facebook as much where, people are going to be sharing as much personal information. And therefore, for example, if someone finds you that you're connected to someone on Facebook and, they have all these bad things, that's a whole different thing. Like on LinkedIn, it's one picture typically, and that's it. And, their professional history. So I wouldn't be quite as worried about it. The second part though, is I wouldn't connect with people that just seem like, odd, strange, unprofessional, or maybe that, for lack of a better word, unsavory. Like it wouldn't really be a good idea to connect with them. I wouldn't just connect with every single person though either. I would be thoughtful about who you're connecting with, especially, obviously if they're inviting you. So kind of two-part answer, wouldn't worry about it too much, but definitely weed out people that just don't look like it would be good to be connected with them. Great question.
Great. Yeah, we have a good question, I think, that strikes at the sort of age discrimination question that you had raised in one of the early slides. So this person writes that their issue is not so much figuring out their own values, it's finding the jobs and companies that match, or in this case would consider anyone over 40 in specifically the tech San Francisco Bay Area. They're more looking for a list, informal or not, of companies that have people over the age of 40. Any recommendations there in sort of overcoming that hurdle?
Sure. This sounds kind of silly, but I would literally Google and try different kind of keyword strings of it, when you're searching, and say top places to work over 40, in San Francisco or whatever it is. Because here's the deal. There are so many different articles that are written and rankings that newspapers and media outlets do that you're bound to actually find something. If you play around with how you search, you're bound to find at least a couple of things that give this, kind of a ranking of these or a listing of them. Another way to take a look at it is to read reviews on Glassdoor of the different tech companies. And I don't know, honestly, this would be a good thing to kind of play around with on Glassdoor, is even plug in, jobs over 40 or organizations over 40 into Glassdoor and see if any of the reviews mention those things, because you're bound to find some information there as well. And then finally, this is where the networking can come in handy as you need to kind of narrow this down further, is when you're talking with people who are in your industry a little bit more, especially who are, at your same level and age, people are just going to hear through the grapevine, what are the good places too. So I would take those 3 steps as a start to help you. Great question.
All right, I think we have time for just a couple more questions. We've spent some time talking about LinkedIn, and what is your advice? Is it hopeless to search if one does not have, or perhaps does not want, a LinkedIn profile? If that is the case, any recommendations?
The deal with LinkedIn is that some industries definitely do not leverage them as much or do not care as much. So for example, what I have found with clients is the education, in education, people don't use LinkedIn as much. And in the medical community, they tend to not use it quite as much. So in some industries, you can get away with it a little bit, without it a little bit more than others. But beyond, outside of those specific industries, you really need to have it, and it's just becoming more and more important. So I would say the person asking, take a hard look at reconsidering being on LinkedIn, because it really is critical to your search, and it makes a huge difference because employers will find you. Beyond that, the second thing that you could do is try to, create your own personal web page that is out there and put that on your resume instead and link to it from there. That would be one alternative.
Great. I think, we have time for just one more question. So we have an attendee who shared that they took some time off due to senior care taking priority. How do you recommend dealing with a long gap on a resume? Perhaps how you could represent, that type of work, and kind of overcoming that gap hurdle.
These can be tough too, but what I would say with on your resume is I would put the dates, and I would just reference and literally say there, sabbatical from work or time off from work to care for elderly family member or something like that. We had a client ask us this recently. And from my perspective, it's better not to have just a gap in the resume, especially if it's a decent amount of time. It's better to call it out, say what it is, so that they're not wondering, and they're at least, you've got some answer for what you were doing during that course of time. You can just say it in a quick sentence in third person as you would the rest of your resume, but put it in there with those dates.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Hallie, for sharing your practical tips on this important topic for job seekers. A reminder to everyone, again, for that email, admin@hallecrawford.com, for the slides, if you're interested in receiving those, as well as a number of other resources that Hallie mentioned. I'll be sure to include that email in the post-event email that I send out to you all this afternoon. Thanks again for joining. Our programming continues February 12th, so we'll have a week off. We'll return on Wednesday, February 12th, with a webinar titled Beat Imposter Syndrome, Strategies for Career Confidence. Join us and learn strategies to manage imposter syndrome and grow confidence in the workplace. You can visit our events page at careers.uchicagoalumni.org for a full list of our upcoming programs. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.